to this Talk Live Show. I am your host, Shanté R. Roddy. We are so glad to have you here, our audience. Every week we come to you on Thursdays at 1 p.m. to share a new entrepreneur story with you so that their story, their journey will empower and inspire you. So come in, sit back and relax, hit the love button, drop any comments that you have. Let us know where you're hailing from, right? If you have any questions during the broadcast, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and we always follow up after the show. So we always like to engage with you after the show. So come on in. Also, share out this broadcast. There are so many entrepreneurs that need to hear these stories, these powerful stories. So it may give, you never know, it may give hope to an entrepreneur, right? Any entrepreneur that's undergoing some challenges, they can turn that around. So we always provide great tips. So I encourage you to share. And then if you missed the live broadcast, always come back for the replay and hashtag replay. So today we have Felice Mathieu. Hi.
How you doing, everyone? Hello.
It is so great to have you here. And he is the CEO of Thoughts Question, right?
Yes.
I'm
Pleasure to be here.
Yes, that is interesting. That's an interesting title. So I'd love to hear more about how you came up with the name. So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, who you are, what you do, and who you serve?
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I love what you're doing, and I love platforms like this. A lot of times you have platforms for people who's already well established, and they forget that before someone was well established, they had to start from somewhere. So thank you and for what you're doing, and I love the platform. My name's Felice Mathieu. I'm the CEO of Thoughts Question. I'm Haitian American. I've been married for 10 years going next year. And what I typically like to do is to start off with a poem, because I was a spoken word poet for about 10 years before I transitioned into public speaking and to running a business. So that's okay with you. I start with a short poem. I've never loved another like I love my mother. I've never loved another like I love my mother. No sisters or brothers other than the brothers I've been blessed with by other mothers. And I love my brothers and many others, but all them put together is but a feather compared to the love I have for my mother forever. November 28, 1996, my mother died of HIV. I literally saw her dying in front of me at the hospital room, or in the hospital room rather. And it was me and my stepfather that I saw her last. A few months after that, my stepfather was murdered in Haiti. A few months after that, my granduncle, which was the last blood relative that I knew, died of diabetes. So mind you, this all happened within a year, and I was 13 years old. So from 13 to 35, my current age now, my bio has made me seriously and obsessively look at relationships, and typically people that have a relative or a blood relation, it's easy for human minds to kind of take for granted in a sense when you have it. But when you don't have it, you'd be surprised how obsessively that creates that desire in you. So essentially, and basically what I wanted to learn was what made relationships fail and what made them succeed, like what made them last, right? That's really what I wanted to learn, because for people that may not understand, like I've seen any relationship that I would form as an extension of a family that I never had and probably wouldn't have until I had a child, some other blood relation other than me. Like if I die, that's the end of my bloodline. That's how seriously I took it. So the next important relationship that I would form after me and God, because I am a Christian, the next important relationship I would form would be between me and my wife, right? So me and my wife get married. 8 months after we're married, her and her entire family are sent to another country. They're deported because they had a visa and it expired. So for the next 4 years, my wife and I basically just survived through communication. I was only able to see her 3 times in 4 years physically. So now how does that tie into what I do? Well, I help spouses communicate effectively in marriage, or spouses to be communicate effectively. Now, why did I choose that out of all the different categories of a relationship? Well, for over 20 years, all the people that I've asked, literally thousands, right, that I've asked, they said communication was the most difficult thing in a relationship. So now from all my observations of what made it last and what made it fail, And from my personal like story of having to really apply this stuff and learn from my mistakes as well, I just share it out and try to solve a problem that seriously is a big problem in the community, especially our black community. So that's what I do now. And to answer your question that you kind of hit it at earlier, I named my company Thoughts Question, and I named my Instagram and I named my Facebook Thoughts Question, as in the thoughts we think question, because typically a lot of people don't question the thoughts that they think.
Mm.
And they go off of that thought that's not being questioned and assume that it's right. And then they force another person, their partner, to go by that faulty thought. And then that creates problems. The most difficult thing for anybody to do, and you could talk to psychologists, you could talk to therapists. I bet you heard this phrase before. Until you admit you have a problem, you cannot solve it. So thoughts question is a way of putting that mirror to yourself and saying, hey, check yourself. Then once you check yourself, you can approach having a relationship with someone else. I didn't want it to be about Felice Mathieu. That's why I didn't take the typical route that public speakers take. I wanted to be about the movement.
Wow, you have such an amazing story. So we'll have to get like more into that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so you focus on relationships, and I would have to agree, communication, whether it's a spouse relationship, a friendship, siblings,
Right.
parent daughter, or parent child, or friends or business partners. I
Right.
think communication is the number one challenge, one of the top challenges to overcome
You
um,
got it.
with any relationship. So for sure, we want to come back and talk about tips. So how long have you been focusing in this area of relationships and spousal relationships?
Since age 13.
Oh, wow.
I say that and people probably think that's just a joke, but no, like my bio, I usually start with a poem and a bio for a reason, because that's really who I am. I know we live in an age of where media is everywhere and everything's a business, everything's about making money and getting
Mhm.
followers. I get it. So people, they have a hard time transparently seeing how, honest someone is. But anyone who known me, anyone who grew up with me, you can even search my name. I have no blood relatives. So at that moment of 13, when my granduncle died, I felt like I needed relationships. So back then, it was more common to find couples who've been married 20, 30 years, right? So I would interview them, literally. Like, I used to work at Publix as a bagger. So at Publix, one of the rules and the recommendations is that you push the carts out. And I worked in an area that was pretty rich in Naples, Florida, one of the probably top 100 richest cities per capita in the world, consisting of doctors and lawyers. So I would have a chance to engage in a lot of couples. I would ask them countless questions. Even before that, in middle school, high school, I would write questions down about little key things regarding relationships. Like, I've literally done this for 13 years. And then I took that, I've literally done this since age 13. Then I took that into poetry. I took all of my findings into poetry. Like, ladies, I feel you. Really, I do. He don't do the things he used to do. Maybe he got too used to you, which confuses you. You two used to be fused. Now he makes moves like he's a dude used to solitude. Your views used to be fused. Now he does him and you do you too. What happened to you too? In the beginning, he was all over you. Now, after an argument or two, he's like, I'm all over you. Like, this was me, right? This was my whole life. Now, the speaking ministry and the public speaking is just an extension of who I've been my whole life anyway.
That is so cool. Okay, so you help people with their relationships. So you do public speaking. So are you in your service and how you serve? Is that in the form of life coaching,
Yes, it's in a form of relationship coaching.
relationship
Right.
coaching?
Yeah, it's in the form of relationship coaching.
Do you intertwine your poetry? Like,
Yeah, I've conducted workshops. I've spoken to Boys and Girls Club. I've spoken on churches, and yes, because that's a part of who I am. All I'm doing is sharing who I am with the audience. So poetry, I've done it for over a decade. I can't leave that out of my presentations, because all of my observations, all of my tips, and all the things that I've learned anyway, I took it into poetry as effortlessly as I talk to you and then speak poetry. Same thing I do in my workshops.
I love it. It's very creative. Okay,
Thank you.
so let's go back some time back to when you were 13, because I don't want to I don't want to breeze over the fact that you pretty much lost your family,
Right.
everybody that meant anything to you in the span of a year. And I
Right.
think all of us as entrepreneurs, we know what it's like to have a loss, but it's rare that we know what it's like to have multiple losses in
Right.
that short period of time and that young of an age.
Right.
Um, and especially when our identities are so much tied, like you said, to those foundational to me and love relationships. So
Absolutely.
how
Absolutely. True
how
thing you said.
yeah, how did that impact you? I know you said at 13, this, you kind of like this calling came to you because you were so passionate and you had such a need for the relationship. What explain, like, take us through that process of what that was like, because I can imagine loss because I've suffered some major losses,
Right.
but that many and close to you in the span of a year and at such a young age and under what I consider devastating circumstances.
Right. Well, I never quite know how to answer this question. I get asked this a lot. I never quite know how to answer it. And the reason it's challenging for me to answer is because, like, if I were to tell you, hey, how do you become a successful person in business? It's not one thing, right?
Right.
Like, how do you get in shape for something? It's not one thing. How do you develop a skill? It's not one thing. So when people ask me that, it's not one thing, but it's usually a thing that comes first to mind.
Yes.
Is the thing that comes first to mind is I had no sense of identity,
Yes.
right? So it's funny that you said what you just said about, that's where you get your sense of self, and that's when so I had no sense of identity. How did I pull from anything? I never even saw a picture of my dad, let alone seen him in person. My mother, who I was raised primarily with, I was even with her, I was off and on, right? So then my granduncle was someone that I didn't see regularly either, but I seen him enough to know that that's another blood relationship. So, and no cousins, no sisters, no nothing. So it's like the biggest sense of the biggest way I can answer this consistently going from now into the future, and maybe for people in the past that have asked me this and I've scrambled to give an answer, is I had no sense of identity. So through relationships, I had to try to figure out what fit and what didn't fit who I was and how I really felt about stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So let's go there then. And because I know there are a lot of people and entrepreneurs that have a struggle with, no matter what the circumstances, finding their identity, who they are, connecting with who they are. I think that is so important. So, how can you tell us about the steps or tips or what you recommend for getting to it from a place where you don't know who you are to really discovering and operating in the fullness of who you are?
You're such a great interviewer. That's a great question. Well, it's ironic you say that because I work at a boys and girls club. So oftentimes when you grow up, you forget how it was to be young, right? So I'm working with teenagers, and they may not feel a certain way about something, but because of the crowd doing it, they go to do it. That's the peer pressure thing, right? They may not talk a certain way, but because their friends are talking that way, they start to sound like their friends, right? But then when you get them, isolating them and put them alone, now they're a completely different person. When you go put them around their family, they're a completely different person. So one of the things that I said at the Boys and Girls Club, where I got everybody's attention, and it's hundreds of kids, right, that are just on the teen side, which I work, and there's more hundreds of kids on the youth side, right? So one thing that I said that I turned the lights off, I shut all the games down, and I said, look, a lot of y'all think being a follower means that, oh, if someone's going to play basketball and you go play basketball too, you're following. Or someone's playing video games and you go play video games too, you're following. I said, no, that's a very basic way of looking at, the definition of following. I said, basically what following means is if you feel something is wrong and you do it anyway, just because fill in the blank, then you're following, right? A lot of y'all have brothers and sisters or mothers, and if someone call y'all the B word or call them the B word, y'all get mad, y'all want to fight. Okay, cool, fair enough, because I don't believe in that word, right? I don't curse as a Christian, right? But then why are you saying that word? That's not how you really feel. So one tip that I give to people, what I gave to them that is applicable to answering the question for you is that how do you really feel something is? Of course, my ultimate guide is Jesus Christ. But to start with where most people are, how do you feel something is for real? Like, do you believe it's right to do X, Y, and Z, or do you believe it's wrong? Then if that's how you consistently feel about it, if it naturally causes you to have a reaction, and with a negative or a positive reaction when that situation occurs consistently, then that's how you truly feel about it. Stick to that regardless of whoever disagrees with it, because there's going to be people, even if a billion people disagree there and you find 10 people that agree, if you time that 10 people by as many people as there are in this world, then that's your audience. That's your voice. That's the people that you're speaking for that may not have the courage to speak or may not even have the awareness to identify with something in themselves that you identified with. That's really as simple and as complicated as I see it as.
That's interesting. I've said that too, and I know, like, even especially like with teens and having nieces and nephews and them wanting to follow, and that peer pressure and knowing who you are and what it is that you really believe. And I think as applicable as it is to you, it is applicable as it is to adults and those of us who are entrepreneurs and small business owners. Is what is real to you? What is it that you really believe? Because I'm of the mindset is that is more than what you say is what you do. So your actions line up with what your belief system is.
Right. Right. I hear what you say, but I watch what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So although you've been doing this like since 13, are you full time in your business doing the life coaching and the motivational speaking, or are you still are you corporate and doing your managing your business as well?
I'm still part time. I'm looking to change that within the next year, but I'm still part time.
Okay, awesome. And so what has been maybe a challenge or two that you've experienced that you've been able to overcome, or that you may be experiencing now and you're working your way through it in your business?
Wow. Okay. Yeah, you're all into my spirit today, aren't you? The challenge is, as a speaker, right? You know, regardless of if I've been in the spoken word for over 10 years, that doesn't matter because this is a new avenue, right? So as a speaker, the catch 22 is event planners won't put you on stage until you've been on stage. Okay, fair enough. But then you can't get on stage until you've been put on stage. so so that's been the challenge. So I'm like, okay, that's what I've been facing for this last year now. I've had speaking engagements. I've thrown my own workshops. My wife and I organized it. I've went to speak in people's homes. I've spoken at churches, and I have a potential big church that I'm not going to name now. So, not to jinx it, but I have a potential big church that's looking to do a seminar for me because they love my website. They love my message, and that's great. But, event planners still want to see you in front of a big stage. So now how am I overcoming that? Well, doing things like this, right? Like I'm of the belief, and I pray God leaves this in my spirit forever. I'm in the belief that, if we're going to use a sports metaphor, right? Before Michael Jordan was NBA, someone believed in him in high school. Then someone else believed in him in college. Then someone else believed in him in the NBA, right? So hopefully for me just being honestly sharing my story and transparently just answering any question and really seriously solving some problems with some of the data that I've figured out for so long. Hopefully one day, from podcast interviews and my Instagram posts that I do and other workshops, and someone's going to say, hey, this dude is a new speaker. He hasn't been on stage. I want to give him an opportunity. And then from that opportunity, I think it'll branch out to other stuff when people really do feel and see that the solutions I'm offering are not just the make money, or it's. I want to see this solved. I hate divorce. I hate people. Like, it hurts me when I know someone and I'm close to someone and they break up. Like, I was that guy. I was the relationship guy that people came to me. And the funny thing about this, like, my longest relationship was my wife. Right? I didn't have a relationship for more than 6 months, like as a girlfriend. Right? It's just I observed this, and people always came to me that was in a longer relationship. That's God's funny, funny like that.
Yeah, that is so amazing. Okay, so I think that's important because we all have challenges, all of us as entrepreneurs in our business, and being mindful of that and approaching it from not, and I talk about this a lot, not I can't. As entrepreneurs, we have a I can mindset, right?
Right.
What is there's a solution to every problem. And I like what you said about sharing your story because that's why we're here. That's why I share this platform because our stories are so powerful. And that's what people want. They want to see transparency because that's what they connect with. That's what they relate to. Because I know a lot of us as entrepreneurs, we live in isolation a lot. That's why we need a community. That's why we need to connect with each other, right?
Mhm.
And know that other people are going through similar challenges, experience similar successes that we are striving towards the same goals that we are trying to achieve for ourselves. And so by you being on this platform and other platforms, I think that that's an excellent opportunity for you. And I'm always the one I try to promote the underdog, the people that aren't known, that aren't popular, because there's so many of us out there that are gifted. Everybody deserves an opportunity. And so that's my mindset anytime I'm putting something on. I look at who did I connect with, like today, with you, and then we build from there. So I think connecting with other entrepreneurs is very important. And so do you think it's important for you? And if so, have you leveraged your connections with other entrepreneurs um, to help you in your growth process?
Absolutely. Well, I don't like to use the term leverage, even though I believe that you're not using it in the way that most people take it, right? But I just build relationships. Like, I have plenty of people that are in on Instagram. There's this guy, and I'm gonna give a shout out to him, Stephen L. Robinson. Stephen L. Robinson on Instagram. I've watched this guy. Me and him started around a few hundred followers. Now he's almost 4,000. I need to catch up. He motivates me. You know what I'm saying? Like, and this guy is consistently just doing interviews and on magazines, and it's really, from a godly perspective, this guy really is sharing some of the same themes from a different perspective, right, about solving communication problems. So I think that's important to build a community of people with the same cause and same goals. I mean, how is that different from having a workout partner, right, that
Yes.
when you go to the gym with, or having a community of people that has a shared interest that you have? I think people make business this abstract, separate thing from who you are, and a lot of you and I know that you're supposed to invest in your business, right? So a lot of times you invest in other people who are a little bit further than you are, right? I don't know about you, but for me, before I even see the product, I want to see the person, right? And I want to connect with the person. So I follow that with everything. I follow that with business. I follow that in life. So yes, it's extremely important. And if by leverage you mean in terms of using connections to get your message out, and to have a mutual beneficial relationship, then absolutely, that's all a part of investing and business, and that's all a part. That's like the air we breathe. That's just a part of it.
Yes, absolutely. I think in that the having it being a reciprocal relationship, right? So it's mutually beneficial. And so I think that's important for entrepreneurs because a lot of times business owners and entrepreneurs don't make those connections. So I'm always promoting you need to make the connections, build strategic relationships, because for me, relationships are like a new currency, is what I tell them. So the
Mm, I
power of
love that.
a relationship It's not what you know, is who you know.
I
Right?
love that. Yeah.
Who you know. And I think the key to our next level is really relationship and collaboration. Because we could do it by ourselves, but I think we can get a lot further if we work together, right? So
Absolutely.
that's really good. So I want to go back to relationships and relationship challenges, because that's your expertise. And I feel like even in life and in business, this is a challenge that we need to overcome, right? And do better, get
Right.
better at.
Right.
Um, what do you find is the biggest communication challenge between people?
Oh, man. This one's not even close. The number one problem I would draw from scripture is, first take the log or the plank out of your own eye before you take it out of your brother's eye. So now, what was the idea behind that? Well, in simple terms, check yourself. But let me give you an example. You know how you're getting ready for work, or you're getting ready to go on a date, or you're getting ready to go out and you're in a mirror, right? You're checking your hair, you're doing makeup, you got a booger, you got something in your teeth, right? We do that physically, but a lot of times we don't do that internally, right? So now what typically happens? You are wrong to begin with, and you start to communicate from that perspective with someone else. And there's nothing someone can do to get you to see yourself, right? Let me give you a practical example. A woman is yelling at a man, consistently yelling, and she feels, and here's the booger. And I had a video on Facebook that went, it was, I want to say viral, but it was pretty popular because I used this example. A booger. People don't see their booger. And the booger is the flaw, right? That we have in ourselves. We don't see it in ourselves. We need someone else to check us, right?
Right.
So now a woman is yelling at a man, and the booger, the flaw is, well, this is how I feel. I'm going to express myself. Okay, it is how you feel. You should express yourself. But who says it has to be disrespectful? Who says you have to belittle your man? Who says you shouldn't listen to how he feel about it? And more importantly, who says that you may not be wrong because you feel that way? Now, that's essentially the mistake that a lot of women make. They feel that because they feel it, that it's by default right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if women feel that way, let me just ask you a question. Remember the first time you had a crush? Are you married to that man? So your feelings can be wrong. I bet you're thinking back now and you're like, oh my God, I dodged a bullet, right? Okay, cool. So feelings can be wrong. On the man side, they think because they think it, and they have some type of logical, systematic way, and they have this evidence, and here's a breakdown that is by default right. Do I have to really tell men how often we think something is right and it's completely wrong? Well, right. So now the number one problem in a communication relationship is that people do not check themselves first. Check yourself first. How you communicating may be wrong, and by default, you force someone else to respond wrong. I'm not saying their response, is justified, but I'm saying though, if I come to you every day and I slap you, first day you take it, second day I slap you again, third day I slap you, and then you punch me in my face, people would be like, oh, why'd you punch me in my face? And not check the fact that you've been slapping them for a long time.
Right. That's interesting.
I think that's the word of the day today.
Yeah. And so I think too that a lot of times when we're communicating, I like how you talked about the mirror, because I talk a lot about blind spots. And I think I heard a preacher talk about it, and it stayed with me, because it's hard to see your own blind spots. You can't see yourself, you see other people. And you're right. When we check in our face, we're cleaning, we see things on the fit, but we're not actually doing the internal work. And I think that's important, to look inside us and say, first, check yourself. Is this right, before you actually start to, I don't want to say lash out, but even confront maybe an issue, a communication situation. Because I think we get emotional, and we let our emotions lead us without what you said, checking ourselves first and really listening. So how important do you think listening is, and to hear not what you want to hear, but to actually hear what the other person is saying and what their perspective is.
It's impossible to listen properly until you check yourself. It's impossible, right? A lot of times people hit me up on Instagram or Facebook and they send me a message. How do I get him to listen? How do I get her to listen? How do I get them to talk more? How do I get, you know, well, you can't escape checking first, right? You can't escape that. And I would never, not for any money in the world, not for any opportunity in the world, like get straight to the techniques. Even in my workshops, I cover mindsets first. And one of the
Yeah.
mindsets is checking yourself. Because if you don't cover the mindset and I give you the technique, you're just going to use that technique to go back to the flawed mindset, right? Like here's an example. I am a foodie. Like one of the examples one of the memories that I have with my mother is she would just always, she was a great cook. We would go out to eat. Sometimes we couldn't afford to go out and do events, but she would cook my favorite meal. We'd play cards or watch movie. Food is big to me. When I was raised by my godmother and grandma growing up, they great cooks. I cook, my wife cook. So you want to make me happy? Give me a great meal, recommend a great restaurant. That's a part of who I am, right? So now I'm in boot camp. I gained weight, and then before I went to the military, I had to lose weight. All right, cool. So I go to boot camp and I lose all this weight. Those are just the techniques, right? Cardio, portion control, calories. Those are just the techniques. But then I still ate with the mindset of being a foodie. So, right? So what was the mindset that needed to be replaced? Hey, you can still eat what you love, just have portion control. Without that mindset, all these other techniques wouldn't matter. Even nutritionists and experts say, look, you can't out exercise the kitchen, right? So how do we make it practical with what we're talking about with communication? If a woman has the mindset that what she feels is right because she feels it, how is she going to listen to her man that says this is wrong, even though you feel it? It's impossible. So now what usually ends up happening? The man is going to stop expressing himself. It's not going to change how you feel anyway. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So the mindset at least should be, this is how I feel. This is what I believe. This is what I feel is right. But I may be wrong. Let me listen to how he feels, right? What he thinks, and vice versa.
I love that. That's what I try to do.
It's challenging as
It's just,
long as you're
it is
consistently
challenging.
trying to. Yes.
Right. And I don't think that there's ever, I personally, you may disagree, you can let me know. I don't ever think that there's a reason or an occasion that would justify disrespect, like in communication. And I see that a lot. And it's not just in couples, but people is just, I think it's a defense mechanism. And a lot of times people will lash out like they have to be right, or they people want to be heard. I think that's it. But I don't think that anything justifies being disrespectful in a conversation. And I think a lot of times not listening, not checking yourself, not listening, and not respecting the other person, right? And what they have to say, and taking that into consideration breaks down a lot of relationships. And I'm talking even business relationships where we've had this conversation amongst women and Black women, and like how can we move forward and not let what may be a petty disagreement, right, in the business relationship and keep us from impacting the lives we want to impact and making the money we want to impact.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't think that there's ever a time to be disrespectful. And if that happens, how do you overcome? How do you overcome that when people start cussing and fussing and calling people out, and things that are irrelevant to the conversation? Is there a way to come back from those types of things?
Well, you asked me a loaded question there. let me try to address it the best way I can based on all the different thoughts and feelings you had mixed in there.
Yeah.
There's never a justification for doing something wrong, period. That's the stance that I have, right? With me and my and Jesus, the walk, and me in the relationship, an extension of his will for us. There's never a justification. Now let's define justification. There's never a reason, there's never a wrong that can be made to be right. Period. That's justification. Reason, though, people often confuse justification and reason. There are often reasons, though. What's the difference? A reason is an explanation. You're not saying that this wrong is right. You're explaining why I did this wrong instead of doing the right. Here's a practical example. If you start work at 4 p.m., right, and you leave for work at 3 p.m., you work 20 minutes away. There's an accident that takes you on a detour, an hour, and you're late to work. Your boss asks, why were you late? I left my work. I left my job at 3. There was an accident and he says, oh, you mean that accident on such and such? And you say, yeah. Okay, cool. That doesn't make you being late right.
Right.
But that's a good reason. Now, a justification would have been, oh, I left my house at 3:59 and you get to work, 4:55. Why were you? Well, I left at 3:59, Well, you're wrong, right? There's no explanation needed. You're wrong. A lot of people can see that in that situation, right? But they can't see that in their relationship with communication. Let's bring it back. A woman yells at a man, or a man calls a woman out of the name. I usually start with a woman first because women are more centered around relationships, generally speaking, than men. Y'all bring us typically. I'm like, how do I call it? I'm not the norm because of my bio, right? So in my relationship, I'm the one reading the books and watching the things because of my bio. My wife is the polar opposite because she has 1 million family members. I'm not joking with you. Like, just her mom alone has like 9 or 10 brothers and sisters, and her dad has 9. It's crazy. You know what I'm saying? So I'm the relationship person that's whatever, but let's tie it back. A woman yells at the man, right? There's never a justification for that. What could be a reason for that, though? Baby, can't you mind paying this bill? Okay, cool, I'll pay it. A day go by. Baby, can you pay this bill? It needs to be paid. Okay, I'll pay it. A week goes by, and now you have to pay a late fee, and you're already tight for money. Didn't I tell you pay this bill? There's a reason for her yelling. Doesn't make it right. But now the man has to check himself too in the mirror.
Right.
That you had a part in this that gave her a reason to do this. Doesn't make it right. But you gave her a reason. Now, if she just yells by default, there's no justification for that. So, and I could use that example on the flip side for the man too, but I just want you to get the idea. So there's a difference between justification and reason. There's never a justification, but often reasons. And those reasons should point to that person and make them really reflect on what their booger or their flaw that they did that contributed to that person doing wrong. Not that it makes it right. So that's the first step, right? The second step, okay, so now how do you deal with that wrong now? Go back to the first step. You see how simple it is? Mm-hmm. It's so simple.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about pride. You talked about wanting to be right. You talked about, ironically, it's a shameful plug, but I really did these videos on my Instagram page. I have a video I had a series called What I've Learned in 9 Years of Marriage. Pride, submission, communication, sex, romance, cheating. These really what people want to know. And this is what I've observed for many, many years. But it really starts. Any question that you can ask me about communication, I'm always going to redirect you back to the first step, which is yourself, right? Because you contribute to someone doing wrong. Not all the times. Sometimes someone's just a bad dude. Sometimes someone's just a bad girl. I'm not talking about those situations. Those are for counselors. Those are for therapists. That's their expertise. I don't claim to even have those skills. I respect that profession too much. I am a coach, right? I help you develop the skills of the people who may not be aware of it, want to do it, and don't have some type of extreme problem that's preventing them from seeing themselves. If you have a problem that prevents you from seeing themselves, usually you're called what? The extreme is a sociopath, right? The extremes, they can't see themselves. They feel like they should kill someone or be able to eat people, right? Or narcissists. That's an extreme order where it's just concerned on themselves, not their flaws, it's everybody else. That's for counselors. But develop the skills, though. To be able to develop the skills is what I'm here to do. And it takes two people that are willing to see themselves And that's why I start before all the other techniques that I can give you that are amazing. I want you to see yourself. And then from there. Now, I know I did a long rant, forgive me, but let me tie it back to business. Isn't it wise to build a business based around your strengths? If it's not your strength, how successful is that business going to be? I remember hearing a reading a book, The Magic of Thinking The Magic of Thinking Big, and they had Henry Ford? I can't remember the exact name, but the guy who started the line of cars first.
Yes, Henry Ford.
Okay, so they had him on the stand, and because his business was so successful, and they had him on the stand, and they asked him a whole bunch of questions, and he said, I don't know. He said, how do you build this business and you don't know all these questions? Well, he said, look, I don't have to know anything or everything, but you ask me a question and I can get 10 people on the line who knows the answers to that question. Isn't that a dude who's honest with himself?
Yeah.
A lot of times in a relationship, we're not. And unfortunately, that's what causes the main problem in communication is you're not honest at yourself. And that breeds so many other problems.
Yeah. I think honestly, that was such a good visual and an explanation. Like, as far as businesses, you can connect with the person who can know yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's like you said, that is the first thing. I think that is so powerful. So that's good. So we could talk like forever on this, but I wanted to circle back. So we talked about your challenge.
I'm sorry.
No, this is really good. I want to know, like, in your business, what at this point in your entrepreneurship journey do you think has been brought you the most success? What is your greatest success thus far?
Connections like this, right? Connections like this. And I say that because, I feel like I'm making a friend with you and not just, just to broadcast ourselves. I started this video saying that I love what you're doing. I love that platform that you're giving for people like me who are just starting out that really want to help, and get their message out and share their story. So making relationships have been awesome. I made a lot of relationships on Instagram. For people who don't know, I have almost 1,300 followers. That's me really interacting. There's a lot of bots out there, and there's a lot of people who just use services. And I'm not against it. I understand the purpose of it, but I'm saying as of now, the 1,300 followers has been me commenting. If you have something of value to share, I'm going to comment on it, whether it aligns with what I'm doing or not. I watch people's stories. A lot of people will inbox me. It's a general conversation just through social media. So that's been the best part of it to me, like making those type of connections of people who are building their dream or people who just have similar interests. Has been the best part for me.
I love that. Okay, so as we get ready to close, I want you to, if you can, share with our audience what you feel are maybe 2 or 3 tips or key things that they can do to build more successful relationships. It can be either personal relationships and or business relationships.
Okay. 3 tips. 1, know yourself, right? Be truthful with who you are, right? And a lot of times you need someone else who you trust and who you respect to really give it to you raw, like to really say you suck at these areas or you're great at these areas. You need that. So know yourself, right? Because when you look in the mirror and you see a booger, you don't say, oh, that booger's not there, right? Okay, so when you ask someone who you trust and who you respect and they tell you these flaws, and you ask several people and they say the same thing, don't deny the booger. That's your flaw. Work on it, right? So don't cause other people to suffer from that because you refuse to deny it. All right. 2, learn how to properly listen. How do you listen properly? When you're listening, you're not assuming that you're right and you're waiting for opportunity for someone to give you a rope chance to come in and say how you're wrong. How you double dutch and to get in? Like a lot of people listen like that, right? Oh, wait, okay, he said, okay, and this is how you're wrong, right? Yeah, don't do that. Instead of doing that, all you really basically have to do is this, okay, I may be wrong. What is this person feeling or thinking that may show me how I'm right or wrong? That's how you really listen, right? And the third, effectively talking. Talk from your perspective, but don't forget their perspective, right? Notice how all of them go together and you can't do one of them effectively without each other. So, how do you use the last one that I just said? Okay, so my wife is great at managing bills. I suck. I'm still working on it. Like I used that example earlier. That was a reflection to me because it just happened. Like, babe, I told you to pay this. Oh, you sure these bill dates don't move every month? You sure? You sure they're the same date? I'm still working on it, right? So she'll tell me that. So she keeps in mind when talking to me that that's not my area of strength. Managing bills is not my area of strength. So when she's talking to me, she's talking with patience, love, and understanding. And the same way, when I listen to her, I'm listening for that frustration because she has told me this over and over. So if she does get out of line, I got to understand and have grace and all that stuff. All these things go together, you know? So, one, to recap, one, know yourself, be honest with yourself, be aware of your strengths and weaknesses. That can apply to business and relationships. Two, listen with the mindset that you may be wrong. That can apply to businesses and relationships. And three, talk from their perspective, right? And understand their perspective while you're talking. It's not all about just sharing what you feel or think. All those three has to go together. Just like diet, working out, calorie restriction has to go together. Building your business, selling products, connections has to go together. God, Jesus, following his word has to go together. You see how all these things have to go. That's how truth works. You can't have truth without it being dependent upon something else. That's just how truth works.
That is so good. Okay, so I have one last question for you that I ask all my guests, and that is if you had a magic wand and you can change anything in the world, what would that be?
Oh man, that is a great question. I've never thought about that. Um, that answer is probably gonna change every time someone asks me some. I would change. I would change selfishness. I think I would change selfishness. Um, what's in it for me is usually the mentality, right? There are some situations where people are off. They become, like for instance, someone grew up poor and they become a millionaire or billionaire. So they give to charities or give to causes that resemble what they went through. And that's great. But oftentimes I think to myself, and I'm a victim of this too, but oftentimes I think to myself, whether it related to me or not, if you have the opportunity to help and serve, why don't you? Why? Because there's nothing in it for you, either emotionally, physically, financially. So I'd probably change selfishness, but I think that's up to God because I think that's just in our nature. The heart desperately seeks what's in its own interest. So
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah. I think that that's great. I think because like we said, sometimes like I'm really focused on self-care and helping women understand that it's okay to be selfish sometimes because a lot of times we're selfless to the point that we're on empty. But when you talk
Mhm.
about giving like from your heart, I think it's a heart thing, right? And so you're like you said, it's like it's something that's in you, but it's something that can be changed. Where because I talk about this a lot because I'm such a proponent of collaboration and getting people to change their mindset that it's not all about them, that look at the collective, how helping someone else and giving to other people you will reap rewards, right? Without trying to have an agenda for doing or for giving. So I
Oh,
think that's a great point.
let me say this because that collective word is perfect. Oftentimes as a poet, I edit a lot trying to find that perfect word. And I've been trying to figure out the perfect word for my business. And you're right, it's the collective. When I thought of Thought's question, my logo or my brand message, which Thought's question is let's think deeper.
Yes.
Let's think deeper. I even have a logo video made of that and everything. And it starts off with me thinking deeper about relationship and communication, as you could probably see, from this conversation. But in the long run, I want it to be people from all different types of professions and businesses questioning the norm collectively. Right. So thanks for putting that in my spirit. Collective effort. Yes.
Yes. I'm all for it. So let's collaborate because I'm always like questioning and the status quo. Like I'm the disruptor. I consider myself the disruptor of the status quo. Uh,
Right.
so I'm all on board for that. So thank you so much, Felice, for being on with us.
Thank you.
You've
Thank
been
you.
such a great joy to have. I see some of the comments that are out there. Audience, we do see you. We see that you're loving this broadcast today. It's been so powerful, and you're so creative, and in your story to show the power to be able to overcome any circumstance, any situation, and create solutions from our situations and circumstances. I think you brought that and much more to this broadcast. So I know that our audience is going to be very much empowered by what you offer today in your story, in your journey. So I thank you. And so please let our audience know again what you do and where they can find you.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's truly was a pleasure. Started my day off right. I feel motivated to go do a lot of stuff now because I started off right. So thank you for having me. Thanks for reaching out for me, and thank you for the patience while I try to understand this, new age way of doing stuff because this is so new for me. Like this is awesome. But my name's Felice Mathieu, CEO of Thoughts Question. To learn more about me and my ministry, you can go to thoughts, as in the thoughts we think, questioned.com. There you can find all what I do and how I do it. My bio's on there and how I help is on there. To follow my movement or to join the community of people who really want to effectively communicate, in their marriage, or if you're a spouse to be and you want to learn how to effectively communicate for marriage, check me out on Instagram at Thoughts Questioned. And on Facebook, I'm on Thoughts Question too. I have a page, but I got to be honest with you, I'm still working on, building the Facebook community and everything. I'm primarily on Instagram. So anybody have some tips on that? Hey, I welcome that flaw in myself because I don't get the whole Facebook thing as much as I do Instagram. But those are the way to reach me. And once again, my name's Felice Mathieu, aka Thoughts Question. And I pretty much help people communicate effectively, quickly, without misunderstanding or disrespect.
I love it. And I'm always of the mindset, I learned this from some expert coaches, is to master one platform. So if you mastered one, master that one before you move on to another social media platform. So you got to do them right, right?
That's a confirmation. Thanks for that. I read that somewhere, but I was like, man,
true.
Some people have 3 or 4 things. Should I do Facebook too? Should I do YouTube too? Like,
right. And so master one, and then you can move on and master another. But
thanks.
if Instagram is your space, Instagram is your space, and they know how to get in contact with you. And he would definitely leave his information in the comments. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Every week we bring you a new entrepreneur story that is going to inspire, empower you. That is the whole reason why we're here, why we have this show. We invite you to be a guest. We do have some openings in October. We are booked for September. But if you have a story to share, I invite you to apply to our show. You can also apply to be a sponsor of our show. You can go to bit.ly/Biz Talk Live Show. Also, we have a wonderful event coming up for Black women entrepreneurs. It's called the Success Summit. Purpose, Plan, and Prosperity. It is an online virtual success summit, October 21st through the 24th. You don't want to miss it. It is for purpose-driven Black women entrepreneurs that really want to create more influence, more impact, more income, and achieve the 6 and 7 figure earnings in their business, right? So you can go and sign up for and register at bit.ly BWP Success Summit 19. Again, thank you so much to our guests. Thank you to our audience for being here with us. You have been enjoying the Biz Talk Live Show, and we will see you again at the same time next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern on the Biz Talk Live Show. Until then, continue to pursue your dreams. Have a good day.
God bless.